Tamara Thomas, editor-in-chief of UrbanHealthToday.com, part of the DocWire family of medical news sites, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Urban Health Weekly. Our goal each week is to keep you informed of the latest in health and medical news right from today's headlines. It's time to empower yourself with open conversations about your medical care with news that matters to you. So are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to Urban Health Weekly. I'm Tamara Thomas, and I'm here with my friends Jackie and Louie, and we've got a great show for you today. But how are you guys doing?
Doing all right over here. Snow day, no school today.
Oh, well, today was a school day for me, but that's okay.
Today was a shoveling day, but that counted as my workout for the day. So far, I'm all right.
All right. Lou, I know you don't want to talk before. We're going to talk about Betty White, and we're going to talk about aging into your 100 plus if you can. But before that, yeah, I know you don't want to talk about this. I'm not sure why, but you've expressed your concern about talking about this. But I just want to put it out there. There are new FDA guidelines that require foods with GMO ingredients to be labeled bioengineered. I think this is fantastic news. Labels on some food products are changing thanks to new guidance now in effect from the Department of Agriculture. Foods that have been labeled as containing genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, will now be known as bioengineered or having been derived from bioengineering under standards set by the USDA. And it's their National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard that took effect January 1st. Critics of the new labeling see it as nothing but a win for big food businesses because they're not using the term GMO. GMOs are now gone, and the label for genetically modified foods is now bioengineered, whatever that means. It sounds much less threatening. It's adorable. It has a bucolic farm scene on it, so it's not only bioengineered, it's your fantasy of rural America. That quote is from Marion Nessel, semi-retired professor of nutrition and food studies at New York University. And I have to say that as much as I admire Ms. Nessel, I have to disagree with the venerable woman. I think name change aside, I think this is a huge step forward for consumer protections. I never thought this day would come in America, like ever. Like I never thought that they already do it in Europe, in the European Union.
Oh yeah, all my European relatives are very big about not getting GMO stuff.
Right, and they can identify. They can go to a supermarket and they can identify. Okay, this is, and then you can make a decision with your wallet. Like, do you want this bioengineered? Do you not care? But, you know, people should be given the choice. And so I never thought I would see this day come. Also, can we not envision a scenario where people just pull out their phones to look up the word bioengineered? I mean.
Did you see that logo, by the way? It is really like the cutest logo. It makes you, it feels like a very organic logo. Like I could see how like it's a little bit sneaky.
It's misleading.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I'll tell you, my reason is that pretty soon we're going to start putting like skull and crossbones. Yeah.
Skull and crossbones.
The skull and crossbones next to every food that I like. I'm not particularly picky in the supermarket. I guess I figure if I ate that crud in the 60s and 70s growing up and I'm still alive, it doesn't kill you all that quickly. That said, there is scientific reason for all of this, and it should be taken seriously. However, I just feel that not all of these labels on foods are equally as alarming. But, you know, how do I know that as a layperson? And when it comes to food, I am a layperson.
Well, I'm looking at the label now. I see what you're saying. It is kind of cute looking. You've got the sun, and then you've got the little plant, and you see the little field, and it says bioengineered, and it's green.
Oh, green. Yeah, it's like
partially produced with genetic engineering. So I can see where it is misleading and person, but I mean, I pull out my phone if I don't know it's something. Have you ever done that in the supermarket? No, you've never.
I look for it. Well, this is where I look for things that say organic if I can. Mm-hmm. And I think organic includes non-GMO.
Right.
That's part of it. And so that part I feel like looking for the words organic. Though there is something about like the feed they talk about, like if you buy like organic beef, or does it need
And
to
they're
be
fed, right, and the grain that they're raised on is GMO. You don't find that out. That's bad.
right?
But,
So that's where you go for like grass fed, grass finished, or that kind of terminology. It gets
right. So
it
those
gets
are terms
complex.
that you should look for. Yeah, you're right. But I'm just saying, so you don't think that it's a step in the right direction?
Well,
Or do you think it's not enough?
I think it's window dressing. I don't know that it's just like it's like a new that like they're coming up with a new logo. Isn't that what they're doing? Isn't it
Yeah,
just
it's a huge concession to the food industry, to be sure. I don't know. I'm trying to look at it for the win that it is, because for years we've
I
had
just feel like it's a new. They just changed up the name. I don't know
people
that.
had to learn what GMO is, and I think people will learn what bioengineered means.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I have faith in
You
people.
feel like the word bioengineer is like a clearer term than GMO because it's not genetically like when I hear the word genetically modified, like wow, that one like really catches.
Well, yeah, everyone knows GMO because it's part of the lexicon.
Yeah.
But I think bioengineered will become part of the lexicon as well. People had to learn GMO, and I think people will learn. Like if I saw bioengineered and I didn't know what that meant, I would pull out my phone and be like, "What the hell does that mean?"
But I think it's like if you're that kind of consumer, like I'm that kind of consumer, you're that kind of consumer. Lou's not that kind of consumer apparently because
he doesn't want to know. He just wants to play.
Yeah, because he said that he was like, well, I ate the crud in the 60s. I think the crud now is cruddier than the crud from the 60s.
Yes.
I think.
Exactly.
I think it's even cruddier than ever. It's more sneakily, more processed, more everything. Maybe that crud in the 60s wasn't that bad in comparison.
Yeah, I guess.
It was. Yeah, if you compare it to the 70s and and even going back to the 50s when there was no such thing, of course the food supply, but that's why a lot of older people are in denial.
Also, when you're like a mom, you got to buy food for your kids. So like that's kind of, you feel like that's part of, you want to know what you're feeding your kid and what you're feeding yourself. Maybe some people are just more, they don't want to know. They're not so stressed about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people shop price more than they shop quality of food.
Yeah, the one difference that I do see is how long things last. I mean, back in the day,
that's true.
A loaf of bread would last you 3 days before it started getting green. I don't want to gross you, but after 3 days, it'd be either moldy or taste horrible. You ate them and they were fresh. They tasted fresher, but you had to eat them real fast.
Wait, would this be like a supermarket bread or like a bakery bread? A supermarket bread?
Supermarket. Bakery stuff is bakery stuff. But a supermarket bread wouldn't last as long. And I think it's because of the preservatives, also like the labels. And I was just a kid, but the labels seemed a lot shorter back then. And I don't know if I don't know.
No, you're right. They do add a lot more stuff.
Way more stuff going on. Are they obligated to label?
Engineers are hard at work in these laboratories and processing food for mouthfeel, and they have all of these.
It's way more processed now than it was. So that
they want it to taste how it used to taste, but they're not making it how they used to make it. And so that's where all the engineering and the food science comes in, where they want people to think that they're getting the same thing, but that what they're actually doing is they're making it way cheaper and selling it for the same price or for more money. I don't know. I'm still very hopeful. I still feel very encouraged by this. I think bioengineered, I think people will learn what bioengineered means. I get Marion Nestle's beef that it is bucolic and it does look cute, but I think people will eventually, I think bioengineered will be picked up in the lexicon just like GMO was. And the most important thing for me is that the information is now out there. And you now have the choice. If you don't educate yourself, then that's on you. But the onus is now, it's out there, it's on you. I don't like, that the meats are not held to the same standard.
Oh, so
But I
it's
think
keeping
that
the
will come.
consumer in the dark. Now you're feeling like this is not this is allowing the
I
consumer.
think this is giving consumers the opportunity to be more educated about their food supply.
Okay.
We're in a crisis right now with so many young people coming up with all kinds of colorectal cancers, breast cancers at much younger. And it's because of the food supply. And I think if people are empowered with information, whether they use that information right away or not, I think that's a huge step. I think the choice should be people's choice, and people will choose with their pockets. And then I think that'll put companies on the hook to stop using that stuff, because we're not going to buy your stuff if it's bioengineered, and it's going to take time. But I think this is the first step.
So you're feeling this is the first step where there was some transparency and the pressure. Well, I mean,
yes, we should have done this a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right.
That's my, I know that it's not enough. But I think it's better than nothing. I think this is a whole lot better than nothing.
It's a step.
It's a huge step. Because I never thought this would happen. I truly never thought this would happen ever in this country, ever.
Wow.
Here we are. Well, did you ever think this was going to happen?
I don't know.
I guess I did. I guess I thought like that, the consumers will pressure just because, when you're interested in health food, and then it becomes in vogue, and people are I guess because I'm that kind of consumer, so I just figured, well, maybe that was a mistake.
I always like to throw business and numbers into things, so I'm just going to throw out one number.
Please
here.
do.
I'm going to throw out one number here. I was just reading a book not too long ago, and the population of the planet in the year 1900 was 1.7 billion people.
Wow, what a difference.
There's now 7 billion people on the planet. We got to feed these people. There's just not enough fish in the ocean. There's just not enough cows in the pastures. Even having too many cows with the methane and everything is bad for the environment. And the meat is bad for the environment. We've got to figure out ways.
But that's not entirely true. But we're not going to get stuck in that loop.
The people and I. Yeah,
no, I'm saying the people are here. But, the whole argument that the cows and the methane and all of that, that's because they're not being fed a natural grass diet. When they're being fed on grass and grazing, we don't have that issue. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Bad analogy, but.
No, it's not a bad analogy.
The fact remains that we have to feed these people.
So are you taking the position that by bioengineering, it's going to provide more food for our
yes.
more populated planet? You're saying it's a necessity in order to deliver.
A lot of the stuff that's bioengineering is so that the pests don't eat the food. You get greater crop yield. They figure out how, which seeds give more strawberries or whatever. Another analogy.
They're not more nutritionally dense, though.
No, that's the problem. They're not nutritionally dense. The body doesn't recognize some of these genetic things that they do to the food.
And a lot of the stuff they do to the food is not making it more. It's not making it more necessarily pest resistant. It's making it more able to handle more pesticides. So you can really layer the pesticides. It's giving the plant resilience.
Yeah, like the plant itself becomes a pesticide. Do you really want that in your body?
Look, the bottom line is that the DNA is being altered or whatever.
Yes, absolutely.
Is being altered to A, increase yield, and B, to increase shelf life.
But what it's also doing to the human body, Lou, is it's changing our DNA when we eat that.
If you're splicing.
I agree. And this is a perfect segue into the next part of our show about longevity.
Don't you dare push me along.
I'm not pushing you along. I am the producer here. But
fine. Moving on.
But one of the keys to longevity is wealth. And one of the keys to wealth is being able to afford better food.
Okay.
I know
it's apparently making some companies very wealthy, all this genetically modified stuff. That's not necessarily more nutritionally dense and helping everybody or helping necessarily farmers.
But guess what? In the organic side of the supermarket, you pay 20-30% more.
That is so true.
Okay.
It's true. It is more expensive.
I rest my
much
case.
more.
If you've got the money, you can go to that green side of the supermarket.
I
Or
would
you
make a
can-
different argument. Let's move on.
It also keeps the earth. Everything's better when they're using organic methods. It's better for the
Thank you.
soil. It's better. I mean,
Thank
come
you. It's better for the environment.
It's better for
the
better for
animals.
everything. It's
It's
more
better for the.
nutritionally dense.
It's better for the earth. Thank you.
All right,
But
Earth lovers. Okay.
Yes,
the
earth
other
lovers.
planet too.
I love my mama. Yes, that's
Right.
how it works.
Right. Well, so all right. So we're moving on since he's pushed me along and he doesn't want to talk about it. So Betty White, America's sweetheart,
Yeah.
just died. Her agent says that the actress died peacefully in her sleep at her home of natural causes.
That's how I want to go.
Right? How can we all go that way? Social media posts claim that Miss White had received a COVID-19 booster, vaccine booster on December 28th with a fabricated quote that read, "Eat healthy and get all your vaccines. I just got boosted today."
Oh, that's so sneaky.
The quote has turned up on Facebook and Twitter, according to reports from the Associated Press, and has led people to think that her death might be related to the shot. First of all, do you really think she speaks like that? Second of all, how depraved can you be that you take this poor woman who just passed away and try to fabricate a quote to push an agenda?
Well,
what are you guys thinking? I just can't wrap my mind around it that, that there's just not even any respect for the dead when it comes to an agenda. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah, that's been going on for a while, hasn't it?
Unbelievable. Anyway, so what does natural causes mean? And how can we all strive to die of natural causes? That's what I want to know. So according to Lewis Nelson, MD, chair of emergency medicine at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, he said, things just sort of stop. It basically means that the death was not due to a non-natural event, such as suicide or homicide. Now, I will take issue with one thing that he did say. He said, technically, things like heart attacks, cancer, and infections could be considered natural, given that they happen to people without any outside force. That, I feel, is completely incorrect, and I don't agree with that categorization at all, because those types of deaths, cancer, heart attacks, and infections, they are totally outside forces, much like slowly poisoning yourself over a long period of time. You don't just get a heart attack on your own.
Are they calling it that because that's just the frequent occurrence of that, like the frequency?
I'm not here to sort of read into what he said, but if I took it on face value, he's saying that because it wasn't a gunshot or a Mack truck mowing you down, that because it happened inside the body, that could be natural. But I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that classification.
So an infectious disease would not be natural.
Sepsis came from somewhere. Cancer came from somewhere. A heart attack came from somewhere. A lot of this is like lifestyle stuff or
is a genetic thing. If you have a familial,
you can have a genetic predisposition to something, but there is an outside force that pushes that button or activates those genes towards your cancer or your heart attack. You don't just get a heart attack.
Well, I don't know.
I frequently gets a heart attack.
I feel like in general, your theme is often we have control and we need to take action and do the most for our health.
Yeah,
and I
there are a lot of people who have gene mutations for cancer that don't ever get cancer. And there are people who have no genetic mutations for cancer.
It's much more complex than we'd like to think. But I'm a little more like, sometimes I recognize that people are trying to do well and there are certain things that we don't know about yet. But I feel like it doesn't abdicate responsibility. We still have to stay in the fight of trying to be healthy, trying to eat right, and just, it never ends. You got to keep fighting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, somebody said, Betty White died of heart failure. Not a heart attack, just call it heart failure, a broader term at 99. You would think
no one would bat an eye because
it's natural causes.
But it wouldn't be a heart attack. It would just have, her heart would have stopped.
Well, heart failure, heart attack is in there. You
No,
know,
heart
the
failure is
heart-
different from heart attack.
But if somebody says Betty White of 62 years old died of a heart attack,
Right,
you wouldn't-
that's the more common
you wouldn't think
occurrence.
that's so natural, you know?
If she died of heart failure at 99, her heart just stopped in her sleep, and God bless.
You know, but that's what they're saying. She just died. I mean, she might have died of a stroke.
No, I'm
She might have
not.
died
No,
of
I'm not
something, but
disagreeing.
it's
I'm
natural
talking about.
causes.
I'm talking about his definition of natural causes. Look, I don't want to get hung up on it. I'm just saying that when he says technically, his quote is technically things like heart attacks, cancer, and infections could be considered natural. I don't agree with that. I don't think those are natural things. That's all I was saying. That's
Okay.
all. But the definition of,
Yeah, what is there an official definition?
that the death was not due to a non-natural event, such as suicide or homicide.
Okay.
That things just stopped. It's like you have a car, and then after 300, 400,000 miles, it just all of a sudden stuff just doesn't work the same anymore. And it just stopped. One day it's rolling along on the road, and then the next day you start it up and it's just gone. And there's no I don't know what happened to it. Well, the car is it's a very old car.
XYZ amount of mileage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's had a long haul, and and that's it, and it's just time to get a new car. But if your brand new car of less than a year that was manufactured 2 years ago stopped, yeah, you'd have some issues with that, right? So that's all it is. And that wouldn't be a natural cause. So I was taking issue where he said that heart attacks, cancer, and infections could be considered natural. I don't agree with that at all. Those are lifestyle things that act upon the body.
Mostly lifestyle.
Yes, mostly lifestyle, some genetic, but mostly lifestyle.
Mhm.
I mean, I just don't think people just, are predestined to get cancer and it just automatically happens. It's okay. You might have a family history of cancer, but that doesn't necessarily mean you will get cancer. Those are genes that can be expressed or not expressed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Look, I'll agree with you that the natural causes definition is too much of a catch-all and just too wide. But what I also like to say is the older you get, the more natural causes.
There's more natural causes.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Stop working.
No, I know.
Natural causes accumulate.
Right. Yeah. And that was the case with Betty. I just took issue with this sentence that he made.
At 99, the only unnatural cause is you fell out a window, somebody shot you. Aside from that, everything else is natural.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even do autopsies on people after a certain age. It's like, they had a nice long life. Right. Even our reaction to people dying at 90 and 90s, it's like, oh, okay. How old are they?
Yeah, they had a good run.
They had a good run. Exactly.
Yeah, we're all envious. That was a very good run.
That was an excellent run. And it was
a well-lived life.
Birthday. Yeah. And by the way, they're doing some sort of a memorial thing, creating some sort of memorial thing for her 100th, celebrating her 100th. Well, speaking of old age, did you know that poor sleep may cause you to feel older than you are?
I could tell you that. Oh.
Well, here's why. Researchers have found a link between poor sleep and negative feelings about aging. Poor sleep can also have detrimental effects on health. Getting better sleep may improve your experience as you grow older, and experts say there are several scientifically proven steps you can follow to get a better night's sleep. I think getting a good night's sleep is super duper important. And I am guilty of, not that I don't get a good night's sleep, but I have poor sleep hygiene, meaning I don't go to bed at a decent hour. I still manage to get 6 to 7 hours, but I'm not getting in bed and doing that whole thing of, winding down my day and all of this other stuff. Which
let me ask you, do you try to go to bed around the same time every night? Because that was I have to take a sleep medicine too, but I try to get to sleep at the same time just about every night and try to get up around the same time every day. And that's really helped me a lot. But
I do have a drop dead time, like I whether I finish or not. No, not drop dead like I fall asleep at night.
That's what I thought you meant.
Okay, it's really getting to be past the time that I should be in bed, and I just okay, whatever it is, I just have to stop, and I'll just deal with it tomorrow. And then I'll, Yeah, so that's what I'll do. But as far as like wrapping everything up, let's say by 8 o'clock, and then having my shower and then being in bed by 9 o'clock, and then reading or knitting or whatever until I fall asleep, that's not happening.
Okay.
What about you, Lou?
I kind of turn off or turn down electronics at 9, and I start watching something on television, and I wake up the next morning with that show finished. The entire series sometimes, I'll start out with episode 1, I'll be at episode 8,
Are you saying the screen is on the entire night?
No, but sometimes.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's kind of. Can I use the term natural causes?
No, that's a poor choice.
But I do wake up at 5 every day, or before, or at 4:45 I wake up, and religiously, whether there's an alarm or not, my eyes pop open, and there I am.
10 key health appointments to schedule starting in your 40s and 50s.
Okay, and let's do that one
when we come back. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we will take a break, and we will be right back.
Frenchman to Oak Street, Tremaine, Gentilly, and the CBD. V102.3 WHIV FM, the vibe of the city for human rights and social justice. WHIV 102.3 FM.
And we're back. And I want to talk to you about the 10 key health appointments to schedule starting in your 40s and 50s. It's a new year, and everyone's making resolutions to be healthier and fitter. What is that? Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's
something like that.
That's
Ben Franklin.
That's words to live by. Oh, that's Ben. Thank you. That's Ben Franklin. I'm such an ignoramus about like who says what. Anyway. So the main doctor's appointments that everyone should be doing are your general physical.
Okay.
Your vaccinations, of course, right? Diabetes screening, that's the A1C, the blood test.
That one's huge.
Yeah, because, diabetes is associated with a lot of hormonal conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, thyroid conditions, you name it. So you want to stay on top of your diabetes.
That is a chronic disease of complications. That's just awful. I mean, it just informs all Western.
Exactly. Yes.
People.
Your STI screenings. Don't think that because you're in a loving, committed.
Yeah, I've heard about that a lot of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are back out there, and they seem to have no idea about using God. Like how?
Yeah, they think it's only for young people. It's like
no, it's not. They're the worst population for that.
Yeah,
they're the least informed, the most clueless, the most careless. They need to get on that bandwagon, and
they're finding it among a lot of like older people as well, because they're from generation where what STDs? No, not.
Oh yeah, and uninformed about the newest STDs that are out there. Like some people who've never heard of HPV and things that. And and you're getting people who are like, I don't need to use a condom, like that old thing, like
yes, exactly.
Like, I'm not
because they're only sleeping with other people their age that somehow that
right, and they're the most the most vulnerable to like HPV and stuff.
When I was going to health ed back in, I guess, the early 70s,
the early aughts,
mm-hmm. The only two diseases you could catch was syphilis and gonorrhea. Everything else wasn't covered. Some of it didn't. A lot of it didn't exist. There was.
But did you wear a condom?
I think it existed. Yeah.
Well, they existed, but the question to Lou is, did you use protection or did you hope and pray?
I'm gonna guess no, because it was the 70s.
I could take the fifth, but I think I used all of the above, and I had a big magnifying glass. And I would do self-exams. I would go to the church and pray to a statue.
Virgin Guadalupe, please protect me.
this like reference check, and I'd ask people, that
Wow.
girl over there, is she loose? And people go, yeah.
After
And I go,
you
"Oh,
slept with
no,
her."
yeah."
After the fact. That's the best bit.
It's all after the fact.
Yeah, you know what? That at least if you get a checkup after the fact, that's a start.
Yeah, I would argue you should probably check yourself before and then after.
And the only place to go is Planned Parenthood, because of course you wouldn't go to your family physician with that.
No, because you don't want everybody to know your business. That's right. That's the important part of Planned Parenthood for everyday people.
Yes,
So you
yes.
show up to the office.
Yeah,
they'll
you
say,
know, and I'm
"Phony
glad you
mustache,"
and I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of people think that all Planned Parenthood does is
It does
or
so
abortion.
much.
But
It does
they,
so much.
that is where a lot of young people go to take
To
care
start.
of their health. Absolutely. And speaking of Planned Parenthood, gynecological exams. So your breast cancer, your cervical cancer, and all of that, those things you want to be checked for through your gynecologist, period. Also if you're within your fertility years and you want to make sure your fertility is okay, you want to make sure you don't have any of these STIs or STDs, the gynecologist is a must see.
They really are the front line
Mhm.
first doctor, because also, if you have some kind of imbalance or they suspect a PCOS, they're going to outsource you to an endocrinologist. Like
Right.
they're the ones who really point you in the correct direction. They're
Yeah.
so important.
The next one is your mammogram. You've got to make sure to take care of your breast health. Don't think that because, you come from a long line of people who live a long time. Look, we were just talking about the food supply being all, doctored up.
All
You
those
don't know
endocrine
now.
disruptors. Yes.
Yes, what your risk for breast cancer now is. They just pulled a bunch of chemicals. What company was it? Procter and Gamble, I think, that just pulled a bunch of their products, their shampoos and stuff like that, because they had cancer-causing agents in them. They did a recall of like 37 products. Yeah. So your breast cancer risk today is much higher than it was 20, 30 years ago.
And it was much higher than our grandparents. They didn't have the kind of environmental stuff and endocrine disruptors that we have, thousands of times more now.
Exactly. So, I have to stress, get a mammogram. And then, of course, dermatological exam. Don't think that because you're a person of color that you're impervious to skin disease. It happens. Get your skin checked every year. Early screening for skin cancer is imperative for everyone. I had a rude awakening when I was a teenager. I went to the beach and I remember I was like the lightest skin among my friends, and everyone was like, "Aren't you going to wear sunscreen?" And I was like, "I'm not going to wear sunscreen. I'm black." Man, I got the biggest
sunburn.
Sun poisoning.
Oh.
I was so miserable for like 2 whole weeks, and then my skin started peeling and everything. And I was
welcome to that club.
Yeah, never again with that foolishness. So yeah.
You got to experience what I experience all the time.
Yeah, so I'm living now. Now after that, I slather myself all the time. I wear it religiously. I don't play around.
Good for you.
I slather my little girl who's lighter than me. It's not a joke. Don't think, people. I'm living proof. It can happen to me. It can happen to you. Dental exam. Well, that goes without saying. You should be going every 6 months. If you have dental issues, you should probably be going every 3 months to make sure that your teeth are calculus and cavity free. Then, of course, there's your colonoscopy. Well, I talked about that ad nauseum, but it's very important to make sure.
Here we are, the beginning of the year, time to schedule all that stuff.
A colorectal cancer screening should begin at age 45, not 50 anymore, particularly if you're a person of color, because the risk for us is much higher. So please get those colonoscopies. And finally, lung cancer screening. Well, that's an interesting one, because now they're finding a lot of people that are not smokers developing lung cancer.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember there were certain things like radon, like if you live out in certain areas, like more like suburban and rural areas, there's radon that will cause lung cancer, but there's got to be like a lot of secondary smoke, pollution.
Oh, yes.
There's all kinds of stuff going on.
And a lot of people spending a lot more time indoors and not getting that fresh air. The American Cancer Society cautions that most lung cancers are silent. So,
Yikes.
you know, please, just get checked, you know, and to make sure you bring things to your health appointments like your ID, your insurance card, your medical records if you have them. Make sure you have like your family history, your list of medications. Well, a lot of times they send you these forms, they email them to you so you can take
and the day before
check that out. And make sure you're thinking in advance, what sort of questions you want to ask the provider. Make sure you have them written out in advance, because a lot of times you only have about 20 minutes maybe. So you want to make that time as efficient as possible and get as much out of that time.
Yes, absolutely. 20 minutes if you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. If you're lucky. So should we take a break or should we move on to this week's topic?
Let's move on.
All right.
To this week's topic.
Thank you, Mr. Producer. So this week's topic, as we were talking about Betty White. We're talking about longevity, living to 100 plus, which is elusive for a lot of us. So how can we live longer lives? What are the keys to longevity? Well, genetic factors only account for about 25 to 30% of life expectancy, but there are disparities in aging, right? So white Americans have an average life expectancy of 79.12 years, but African Americans have an average life expectancy of 75.54 years. Even worse, the average life expectancy of a white female in the US is currently 81 years, while the average life expectancy of an African American male is only 71.9. So not even hardly 72. It's almost a 10-year difference.
Wow.
That's bananas, right? But it goes deeper than just race. Because there's disparities in income too. And the greater one's income, the lower one's likelihood of disease and premature death. Studies show that Americans at all income levels are less healthy than those with incomes higher than their own. Not only is income, which is the earnings and other money acquired yearly, associated with better health, but wealth affects health as well. That's a person's net worth and assets. Mm-hmm. Though it is easy to imagine how health is tied to income for the very poor or the very rich, the relationship between income and health is a gradient. They are connected stepwise at every level of the economic ladder. Middle-class Americans are healthier than those living in or near poverty, but they are less healthy than the upper class. Even wealthy Americans are less healthy than those Americans with higher incomes. So income is a driving force behind the striking health disparities that many minorities experience. In fact, although Blacks and Hispanics have higher rates of disease than non-Hispanic whites, these differences are dwarfed by the disparities identified between high and low income populations within each racial ethnic group. So that is to say, higher income Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans have better health than members of their own groups with less income. And this income gradient appears to be more strongly tied to health than their race or ethnicity. People with lower incomes report poorer health and have higher risk of disease. This information comes from urban.org and the study, How Are Wealth and Income Linked to Health and Longevity? So this all sounds pretty grim, but fear not, because there are ways we can extend our lives without being rich. I know you wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I felt a little bit fearful from that thing.
Before we talk about food and being able to afford the better foods, I think some of that is part of it. I also think about living space and living conditions.
Right.
If you've got a lot of money, you can afford, bigger places,
right?
And you're not around other people that can give you communicable diseases and those things.
You're not living like sardines in a can.
You're not taking the subway where you can get something from 20 people. You're either driving yourself, or if you're really rich, you're being chauffeured.
Right.
And you
which
only
is the
worry
ultimate.
about
see, I'm not even thinking about those things in particular. I'm thinking that when you're rich, you're less stressed. You're just so much less stressed with bills and all those things contribute to stress.
I think you have a different kind of stress when you have money. I don't think stress goes away.
Well, I think it's a very significant different kind of stress. I think. Look, the super wealthy. Also, when you get very wealthy, when you're old, you're more likely to have really good care, to have private aid, all those things.
Very true.
Better access to doctors, time to go to the doctor.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
very important.
Yeah, that's huge.
And money to access a better doctor.
That's right.
That's why universal health care has really got to be something.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna worry about, are you going to be able to afford a copay or any of those things? Or good God, this is going to cost me my job if I miss another day.
I can't take time off because I've got to work.
I can't take time off. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And let's be real here. Low cost health insurance or government provided insurance gives you the lowest standard of care that's acceptable.
That's right.
So you don't get the good stuff. You just get the basics. And if you could afford more, you can afford diagnostics that are not covered.
Absolutely.
And then when you get to the next level, it's like you don't even care if it's covered or not. You just want it.
Right. And you can get yourself a concierge doctor. Those things make a big difference too.
Doctors on demand, and they do a lot more for you. So there I do agree. As far as stress, I find that that's a personality thing. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. Because while less income, you got to worry about the light bill and did I go over on my minutes on the phone, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, but money is options. If you don't have money, you have fewer options. I get that, like there's that drive, that stressful drive that some very, very successful people have, where they really push hard and they're driven and they pose a lot of stress on themselves. But they're also in a position a lot of times where they have options. When you have no money, you don't have any options. You can't choose who your daycare provider is. You can't choose who your nanny is. You don't have a nanny. You can't choose where you park your car. You have to go. All those things. You can't choose your doctor so much. That makes a huge difference. That's stress.
It does make a huge difference. And you're right about those things. I don't know if it's fair though to say that that people with money don't have stress. I think
they do have stress, but I think they have a different kind of stress.
But the stress affects the body the same way whether you're rich or poor.
I disagree.
There's stress and there's distress. Distress affects everyone the same way. No one is immune to distress. Stress, like I worked out and I just killed it, and this workout was like, so it pushed me to my limit. Or like I had this puzzle that I did that really pushed my brain to the limit, but it was so great. That's stress. Distress is like things like having to think about.
You don't have your rent money. If you don't have, those are really a different kind of stress.
But there are things that are beyond control of people.
Yes, absolutely. Tragedy is beyond that. The uber wealthy are not protected from tragedy. So there's
family stress, there's business stress.
Yes, they're not protected from that, but they're from those everyday kind of really.
So I would say that the degrees of stress are different. Yeah. I wouldn't say that the stress itself is different because stress is stress, but I would say that the degrees of stress are different.
And I'm fortunate enough to know people on both spectrums. Like the very wealthy and the not so wealthy. I'm not going to call them less fortunate because I know a lot of not so wealthy people that are pretty happy.
Right.
And I'll tell you, the stresses that the wealthy has is, I bought $100,000 car that looked great and it just got jacked, and those are all things in reality. And they can own a business and they're making plenty of money, but some of that business is not going well. I might have to lay people off.
Yeah.
And that's
a very significant stress right there. the responsibility of being where you have all these people that count on you. That's just, that kind of business stress. Yes.
And I'm talking about different individuals, but individuals that worry about those things.
I feel guilty. I don't have enough time for my children. That's a huge stress.
That's another
Yeah,
one.
but that stress is especially hard for people who are
I
down
want to be able to
on
make
their luck.
my kids things, but I have to work. I have to have these meetings, or look, they're lucky enough to have vacations. I can't even enjoy my vacation because
I can't have one. I don't have any period, like that. Yeah,
or I'm working so much I can't even take time off. Those are stressors as well.
I relied on my accountant and I didn't read my tax return.
And now I got
signed
audited.
it. Now I'm getting audited, and the accountant did all. I mean, all those things. They don't sound as important. And look, when you're talking about getting laid off, or being the person who has to decide whether people.
That I could imagine is really awful.
Laid off, I think, is a lot worse. But is it more stressful than sitting there and saying, "Oh my God, I have to face all these people, and I know them, and they've been with me. I got to lay them off." And some of that happened, just this year during COVID.
Yeah,
business owners were trying to figure out, like, well, what do I do?
That's awful.
And so as to degrees of stress. But I do think that having a lot of money gives you options.
It certainly does.
And having options, for the most part, is less stressful than not having a lot of options and a lot of choices. And just being,
Haven't we established it's better to be uber wealthy and miserable than to be poor and miserable? Like, I think that's a really a no-brainer.
I think misery is misery.
Yeah.
I mean, what you do with your misery, but I think it's better to have a positive outlook, whether you're rich or poor.
Yeah.
That is a huge.
There is something to it. So
Right.
What if you don't have that nature? Like, do you fake it till you make it? That's an interesting, maybe trying hard to have a positive outlook without it being that toxic positivity.
Some people have naturally sunny.
Right. Well, they're lucky.
Right. And that's that cuts across the socioeconomics. I mean,
that's interesting.
There are people who grew up poor and say that, we were poor by,
we were happy. We had our
we were happy. Or we didn't want for anything. We never realized we were poor. Mm-hmm. You hear that a lot from very positive people because their families have turned lemons into lemonade. Mm-hmm. And the same thing for wealthy people as well. So, I mean, yes, it's always good to have options. Mm-hmm. But I don't think a lot of that determines, your stress level. I think a lot of people's stress is determined by their outlooks.
But if we throw in, getting back to the beginning of this study, if you throw in all the factors, the food, where you are, and all that, having money is a lot better than not having money.
Yeah, that was my theory. Yes, I agree.
And maybe the one stress is different from the other. I'm not going to say it's a lack of stress, but somehow, some way, if you got money, you live in a lot longer than the person that doesn't have money.
Right.
And it's not just food. It's
your social circles as well.
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
It's all of the above, and that's a very so regardless of color, genetics, or anything like that, as a population, the more money you got, the longer you're going to tend to live.
Well, this is a great segue because right now we're going to talk about blue zone habits. Mm-hmm. So you familiar with the term blue zone? There are places in the world where people live the longest and are healthiest, and these places are known as blue zones. And the blue zones of the world are in Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, and Loma Linda, California. Now, Loma Linda, California is an outlier because it's in the U.S. and the U.S. generally is not as healthy as other places in the world. But Loma Linda has a very, very high Seventh-day Adventist population, and they adhere strictly to the good word in terms of how they live and their diet. They live as much as 10 years longer than the rest of us. And a lot of it is because of they're strict vegetarians. They only eat what the word, the Bible advises, and they exercise regularly. Plus, sticking to their name, they always rest on the seventh day, no matter what. They take that day, they use it to do absolutely nothing. No phone calls, no work, no sneaking things in, no nothing. And they also don't smoke or drink alcohol.
That disqualifies me. But
So what makes them blue zones? So some of the things that make blue zones are they have good social networks or community, and I don't mean online, I mean in person. They somebody might listen and say, well, I've got 100 friends on Facebook. No.
the more friends you have on Facebook, the longer you live. You first.
That's not what I mean. I mean, they have actual in real life IRL friends.
Yeah.
And community, close-knit, tight-knit. Their physical activity and outdoor activity, they stay very active.
Mhm.
Their diets are rich in whole foods, healthy fats, and fermented foods. They have strong family connections, and they live low-stress lifestyles, and they in no time urgency.
Low-stress lifestyles.
Yes, but it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with
But
just
where they're living in sort of paradise type areas. Those are all sunny areas. Well, I don't know about Okinawa, but still those tend to be low stress. They're low stress lifestyle. I mean, they're low stress areas.
It's a
I think
design.
it's
It's by design.
It's
It is the
diet,
design.
too.
They eat a very plant heavy diet.
Okay.
They're constantly on the move. They eat lots of legumes. A couple of other things are the women are empowered.
They're living closer to the land also.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
A lot of sunshine, a lot of gardening. That's the
Yep.
thing. They're living
Yep.
closer to the
So
land.
Wow.
when I looked at the countries, Spain, Italy, Japan as a whole, and Hong Kong, Macau, all of those were in the top 10. The only outlier geographically was Switzerland,
Mhm.
but I'm going to throw that as to money because there's a lot of money in Switzerland. So I think the money factor.
Wait, is Switzerland, parts of Switzerland are a blue zone?
No. They're not blue
The
zone, but they
country
do
itself
have.
has
But they do on
tremendous longevity.
average.
That's a very bucolic. They're very outdoorsy in Switzerland.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's a very relatively low stress
And they
lifestyle for
have
such a
Yeah.
business oriented place.
and they have a spoonful every day of cod liver oil. That's
It's
oh
your
yes, they don't
oil.
do that. They cod and
Yeah.
rain or shine, snow or no snow, they're out in that. They're outdoors, and they start that from very young, and they're always in that fresh air. They're not playing around. Yeah. So those are some of the things that these blue zones have in common.
Right.
And if you look at the Venn diagram of Loma Linda, Sardinia, and Okinawa, you see family, no smoking, plant-heavy diet, constant moderate physical activity, social engagement, and legumes are the main things that they have in common.
Mhm.
Hey, that's all the stuff you've been saying.
If you were
Yes.
to draw a
Thank
line, if you draw a line around the map, they're all within more or less the same latitude.
Oh,
that's
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't think of it.
That
as-
makes for a certain degree of outdoor living. A lot of exercise,
that
fresh air.
They have the ability to spend a large percentage of their time outdoors, and the ability, especially in Spain and Italy, which I'm pretty familiar with those
Mhm.
customs.
Countries. Mhm.
Yeah, is that they grow their own food in their backyard.
Gardening.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that gardening, not only is it stress relieving, but you can't
Just
get
being
any
in touch
healthier.
with the being in
You
touch
can
with
work up a sweat gardening very easily. It's good exercise.
Can't be healthier than eating your own.
But also,
mangoes.
do you remember the project that we all did when we were like in school, where we put the mouse and the plant inside the jar, and they lived happily ever after? Do you remember that one?
Mhm.
One jar just had the plant, and the plant eventually died. One had the mouse eventually died. Then they were put in the jar together, and they both lived.
Mhm.
Do you remember that? You don't
Something.
remember?
No, I did not. But that would make sense because greenery matters.
Right, exactly. We are so we are
Tuned in with nature.
with the land
Mhm.
in a way that we've gotten away from. We've gotten away from that. Well, unfortunately, we can't all live in blue zones, but there are more attainable ways to increase your longevity.
Mhm.
This is a list I found on verywellhealth.com.
Hmm.
So number one, exercise regularly. Research indicates that moderate exercise, when practiced regularly, can actually roll back the clock in your DNA. That's why J-Lo and Halle Berry look so damn good.
Oh my God, they look so good.
I'm right. They stay working out. I want to be like them when I grow up.
Yeah.
Fill up your plate with vegetables. While there are numerous debates about the best diet for increased lifespan, nearly every diet agrees that eating more vegetables is the way to go. Consider intermittent fasting. There are many variations on how this is achieved. You can find that on the internet. Fasting has been shown to significantly extend the life and improve health. And studies dating back as far as the 1930s have shown that caloric restriction extends longevity. A study published in 2018 looked at 53 non-obese adults over a 2-year period, and the test group restricted calories by 15%. Metabolic studies showed that the test group had evidence of less oxidative stress damage compared to the control group. Next one, get enough sleep. Most people feel best when they get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. I only get 6 to 7 hours on weeknights. What about you guys?
I try to get at least 7. I really hope to get I try to get 7 minimally. Yeah.
With me, it varies with daylight savings. I go 8 or 9 when it's winter.
Ooh, 8 or 9.
You, 8 or 9
The sun,
That feels luxurious. I would love to get 8 or 9.
Yeah, but in the summer now it's.
J-Lo says she sleeps. I think she said she sleeps a minimum of 8 or 9 hours, something like that.
Wow, that feels luxurious.
Yeah, my eyes always open after 6 hours, no matter what.
Yeah, I always wake up in 4 hours and then I'm able to go back to sleep. So
I force myself back to sleep, but when I wake up 6 hours later, it's not like I feel like, oh man, I need more sleep. It's like I'm telling myself, well, I should have 7 hours. Everyone's where they feel rested varies. So that's I guess that's interpreted. But you should definitely not get less than 6 hours. Like, if you want to have a functional brain into your old age, like I would suggest not getting less than 6 hours of sleep. Carefully manage your stress. Stress can have unhealthy effects on your body I know you're laughing, and can promote unhealthy behaviors like overeating or smoking. Cultivate personal relationships. Spending time with our loved ones actually does seem to improve longevity, maybe because it decreases stress or risky behaviors. One study led by researchers at the University of Exeter Medicine School in England found that volunteers had a 22% reduction in mortality compared to non-volunteers. And finally, don't smoke or drink excessive amounts of alcohol. I would say stay away from both of those things. And you got to make a commitment today to make one healthy change per week, and little by little, you'll see and feel a difference over time. It does work. I'm telling you that it does work. I promise you.
I agree.
It will work. Closing thoughts, people?
A lot to chew on in a lot of different ways, and all.
Hopefully plant-based chewing.
Exactly.
Whole food, plant-based.
Yeah.
Like a triple entendre on that one. But, you've given us a lot to chew on, and
I'm feeling inspired for the beginning of the year. I like this.
So that's the point of this. I want people within their control that these are things that can be done. Yeah. If they can do it, so can we, people.
Yes.
So, in closing, Betty White, thank you for getting us thinking about it.
Well, Betty White said that one thing she attributed to her aging well was not having greens on her plate.
Oh,
I don't know if she was saying that as a joke or if she was very serious. But
I'm pretty sure that was a joke.
I hope so, because I remember when she died a few days later thinking, should have had more greens, Betty. Time we have today. You guys are amazing as always. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Urban Health Weekly today. I hope you'll join me and my friends next week so you can stay informed and inspired to take control of your health. See you next time.